Hello everyone and welcome to step 4 in adding some sensor calibration to our WizardBot line sensing. Now you're going to have to complete the first 3 steps before you can come on to step number 4. Step number 3 is going to add in the calibration settings into the EEPROM, and that is essential for the code that we're doing today because we're going to pull those settings out of the EEPROM. So if you've not done step number 3, please make sure you do step number 3 before doing step number 4. We are going to modify code that we generated in session number 5. There were 5 steps there, adding the line sensing and the drop detection. Please make sure that you've completed all 5 steps because you're going to need all that code in order to make these modifications. I recommend you create a backup of that code before you start these modifications today. Just in case you make some mistakes, delete something you're not supposed to, etc. You can always go back, make a second backup, and then sort of clone it and start again, basically. Okay. Now, supporting documentation is on the Now Room. So if you do need to see these code changes in a PDF or something like that, it's a bit easier to read for you, then that is on the Now Room, so have a quick check of that. Now we are going to modify a number of little areas in the code today because we're going to change some names and we're going to just move some stuff around. Okay. The first thing we're going to do at the top of your main tab, I want you to make the following changes. We're going to add a new stop button. This button is going to allow us to stop the robot. At the moment, you press B1 and it starts, but there's no way to stop it. So we're going to use button B2 just to allow us to stop that robot. So you can reset it and then press button B1 to start again. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do in that yellow box, we're going to actually make some modifications to some existing code. Before, we were taking left sensor and right sensor baseline readings when we started the robot. We're not going to need that anymore because we're going to replace that with these new calibrations. So you can delete those 2 lines in the red box at the bottom left there, and then you're going to replace it with the code in the yellow box. We're going to load in the left sensor and the right sensor's line calibration and drop calibrations that are going to come in off the EEPROM that we saved as part of step number 3. Make those modifications and then move on. In the next step, in the setup function of your main tab, I want you to just add the pin mode for this new button B2 for this stop button. But I also want you to make a call for initialize line sensors. Now we're going to move this from the loop function where we've got the start button into our setup function. That's because we're no longer needing to catch the values from the sensors at the very start when we press the start button. Okay, we can now load this all as part of setup, and it's going to load as part of the EEPROM. Okay, so just move that line of code in the yellow box that's going to come from that loop function, and you're going to move it into the setup function. Next, I want you in the main tab still, in the loop function, we're just going to add in the code for the actual stop button itself. In this code, in this little green box here, we're going to check if the robot is currently running, so it has started. If it is currently running, we're then going to check if button B2 is currently being pressed. If it is being pressed, then we're going to want to stop the robot, so we're going to stop the motors, and we're going to flag it as not running anymore. Okay, and that will allow button B1 to then run and start when we press button B1. Once we've made those changes, I want you to scroll a little bit further down in that loop function, and you will notice that we're going to modify a couple of these little lines of code. Now we're going to change the function names. This is what we call refactoring the code. It's because we're changing the functionality, we can actually get rid of 2 of the functions we've got already and replace it with just 1 function. Those 2 functions, they're going to check for the line and they're also going to check for the drop. Because we're running it against a calibration now, we can actually use the same function and just pass in the different calibration for the line and the drop. This will make more sense when we start typing in the code, but just modify the following function names, change them to the ones on the screen there, and then also make sure you also change that LS line calibration at the end there and the RS line calibration. We're going to pass in the calibrations from the EEPROM into these so that we get the correct sensor readings and the check on the line. Once you've done that, I want you to scroll a little bit further down where we've got the function check for drops. Okay, in that function, we're going to do the same changes. We're going to change it to the same function name. Okay, so notice that in those orange boxes, we've changed the function names. And then we've also added the LS drop calibration and the RS drop calibration, and we're passing those into that function so that it does the right check on the right values. Make those modifications now. Once you've done that, we are then going to go into the configuration tab. Now this is probably the biggest chunk of code that we're going to have to add today. This is where we are actually going to load the values from the EEPROM. Okay, so type in the following code in the green box. It's going to go at the bottom of the configuration tab. Notice that we're going to read in the EEPROM. We're just going to check for the letter S to make sure we have written this calibration in. If you've run that calibration set, it would have added S followed by the 4 values into the EEPROM. Type in this code and then move on. After we've done that, I want you to move to the line sensors tab. we're now going to add into the initialized line sensors, we're going to add load sensor calibration to make sure we actually called a function that actually loads those calibrations that we typed in the previous step. Okay, we're also going to remove the existing 2 lines of code that we have in there that we're taking a baseline. Okay, so you can delete those 2 lines that in there. And then we're going to delete the 2 existing functions that are in there, the void sensor can see line and sensor can see drop. We don't need those anymore. We're going to join those together in a single new function. Okay. Once you delete those 2 functions out, you can then add in our new function, which is check sensor against calibration. So type in the green box, and we should have one function for both the drop and the line sensing. Once we've done that, in the final step, I just want you to move to the motor control tab and just add in the stop motors function. All this is going to do is basically set both those motors to speed 0. Okay, and that's going to stop the robot, and then it's going to allow us to press button B1 to start it all back up again. Now, hopefully, that's all the code that we need. Okay, upload this new code to your Wizbot. Hopefully it compiles and goes on okay. As before, when you press button B1, it should start the robot. Now, though, when you press button B2, it will also stop the robot. So you can now start and stop the robot. In theory, assuming we did the calibration correctly, assuming the code's been typed in correctly, it should now be more reliable when it goes to following the line and detecting those drops. Now, I'm going to say this. Be ready to catch the robot in case it falls off. Okay, the sensor positioning on the Wizbot is not perfect. It's there for demonstration, so if the wheel goes off the edge first, then it might go over the edge of the desk. So just be careful and make sure that it does actually function and it does actually follow the line and detect the drops correctly. We don't want you breaking your robots at this late stage. Fingers crossed, that is all the calibration working now. If you do have it being a bit unreliable, maybe it's not sensing the lines or the drops properly, just go back to that calibration step, upload the calibration code, redo the calibration, and then upload this code again, and then it should use those new calibration settings. Okay, hopefully it's all working, and see how we get on with the robots.